I would like to talk about the two major ways to make games. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. There's something called reskinning games. And then you have the regular way, which is the good old game development mechanics. So first of all, what is the game development mechanics? I'm going to go with this one before going into the game reskinning. The good old game development scenario is as follows. First of all, someone or a group of people get together and think about an idea for a game or multiple ideas. So they all brainstorm and they're like, oh, I'd like a game like Street Fighter. And somebody says, I'd like a game like Angry Birds mixed with Crossy Road and Cut the Road. So they come up with all these ideas and then they get together and they end up with one final game idea. And they're like, okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. Now, they give this to another person that would be the product manager. What would that person do? That person would take the game and from this idea, it would break it down into small chunks that can be used by multiple people so that it can go into development and create. So what am I saying by chunks? All right, so let's take an example. Angry Bird. You guys are all familiar with Angry Bird, and if you're not, then please go check it out. Type Angry Birds and you'll find it right there on the internet. Angry Birds. So first of all, they never came with the idea right away of Angry Birds. It didn't work like this. It took them 52 or 53 iterations to arrive to the Angry Birds that you guys know, the successful one. Before that, there was plenty of versions that were never really made it. So let's go back to Angry Birds and how was the regular process of game development. Somebody has the idea now, it's inside of a kind of a document, and what they have to do is break it down into feasible steps. So the person will be, okay, so we have the game and we're going to have 100 levels in it. And now let's take a look at what each levels are made of. So already they just said that it's a game that has 100 levels. So somebody will have to create 100 levels. Now, next thing you want to talk about is what is the game made of? You have to think of who are the main characters in the games. Okay, so here we're going to take birds. So we have the main characters. Now you have the good guys or the heroes, and you always need enemies. So who are the enemies? What type of enemies do we have? And here we're making a list. And somebody will have to break this down into all the types of enemies, all the types of the main characters, and where is this happening? And then somebody will have to design the environments, all the different scenes or landscapes in which the game will happen. And then somebody will have to do the storyboard or the scripting, say, okay, we will start in the jungle, and what happened is that we have the enemies, the pigs that stole eggs from the birds. And that's the whole story, the script behind. And then they're going to develop this as you go through each levels. And then somebody would say, okay, so that's what the main game is about. And then they have to make it viral and make it entertainment, right? It has to become something that's entertaining. How do you do this? By adding secret recipes that every game developers already know. I'm not going to go too much into details yet. I'll talk more about this later. But then once we have all these steps broken down, then the product manager would say, okay, these characters needs to be created. We're going to use 3D. So we're going to give this to a 3D concept artist. The concept artist will start creating illustrations of how they're going to look. And then they're going to give it to a 3D mesh or character designer. This guy, you know, his job is to just actually take the blueprints and make them in 3D. And then they can give it to a 3D animator person that's going to add a skeleton and animate these people. And once they have all these models, then they're going to give it to the Unity developer. Now, there's different types of Unity developers, but it's some guy that's going to take all the assets, put them all together inside of levels within Unity. Now, you also have a programmer or multiple programmers that will animate or use some kind of, add some artificial intelligence to these and mechanics. So when you have a sling inside of the game, the Angry Birds game, that Sling has physics and has animations and gestures. So all of this is done by the programmer. Now, once the game has been done, usually there's a bunch of testers. It's not a very waterfall process, actually. It's a back and forth process, and there's different technology or methodology that you can use on this. You should take a look at agile methodologies, Kanban, Scrum, and so on. There's plenty of these, but we'll talk a little bit more about it later. Having said that, now we need these teams of people that are going to test the game and make sure that it has good quality. So it's the quality assurance team. And once they know that the game has been tested and everything is okay, they can publish it. But they're not going to publish it straight to the app store or the console. They're going to publish it in beta. What's a beta version? You probably already know. It's a group of people, sometimes it even goes alpha, a group of people that's allowed to play with the game, and they know that the game is not finished. So they will report any bugs or anything that's not really working well. And there's going to be lots of improvements and tweaking of the game, and then the game is finally ready. Now, there's many ways to release the game, and don't think that the simple way is to take the game and put it in the app stores. No, you have to be smarter than this. And many people, for example, what they do, Supercell or Candy Crush, they will publish the game in only one country, let's say Mexico or Canada. And then they see how it goes, and they tweak the game so that people get hooked to it, and then they can go full force in all the world, so United States, Europe, and so on, Australia, and so on. So that's different strategies. Now, there's also different ways to monetize the game with advertisements and in-app purchases, but I will go into details later on. What I want you to understand now is that this is the regular way of making games. But as you can see, this requires a lot of effort and a lot of different people that are involved in the whole process. Now, obviously, again, you want to be a jack of all trades in the sense that some of the people can do multiple jobs at the same time. The person that can create the concepts of the characters can also be the one that can create them in 3D and can also be the one that can model these characters in 3D. And then the person that uses Unity could be the one that adds this character inside of Unity and programs them. Then it could also be the person that's going to publish them in the stores. Okay, so remember, multiple people can do multiple jobs at the same time. And that's what being an indie developer is all about. You have to wear all these different hats and try different things at the same time. It's not that easy as just having one job. If you want to just have one job and one specific task, then you probably want to go into big studios like AAA games like Electronic Arts or Ubisoft. Having said that, as you can see, this can become quite expensive and lengthy process.